Welcome to Burkittsville, Maryland, and today we're going to look at the malicious entity behind one of the most defining films in all of horror, that being Elly Kedward, the Blair Witch of the Blair Witch Project. The enigmatic figure that haunts the forests of Burkittsville, creating chaos, madness, and terror to all that venture into those woods. A witch whose legend has had far-reaching effects, tales passed down from generation to generation to serve as a warning to stay out of the forest, lest the Blair Witch consume you. And those that don't heed this warning find themselves in the grips of madness. This universe has spanned comic books, video games, young adult novels, books, and a couple of sequels. But whether or not all of those are considered canon are up for debate. After browsing several forums and asking various experts, I think I've come to the conclusion of what is widely considered canon by the fandom. We're going to cover what is shown in the mockumentary The Curse of the Blair Witch, the Blair Witch Project, and the 2016 Blair Witch. If you feel I may have mistaken, please comment below. With all that out of the way, on with the show. In order to better understand the Blair Witch, maybe we should look at the real-life crimes she was based off of, that being the witch trials that dominated the early New England colonies of the late 1600s. And when I say crimes, I mean those executed by false allegations. I don't think it's wrong to assume that the witch trials are one of the blackest stains on American history, but it didn't start here. Rather, it was carried over by religious zealotry from the Church of England. To be fair, we had left England for religious freedom, but not even an ocean was able to separate what was deep in the hearts of some of its church members, specifically the sexist belief that women were more prone to damnation or succumbing to the whims of the devil. It is believed that the accusations began in 1688 when a group of children had accused several women of witchcraft that quickly resulted in their trials and executions. 3 years later, in 1692, the daughter and niece of a prominent figure named Samuel Parris began having unexplained fits. Fits that the local physician chalked up to being witchcraft. The children would place blame on 3 local women, 2 social outcasts, and a Native American slave woman. The 3 would be arrested and would be questioned for days until the Native American woman confessed and pointed the finger at the other 2 for being her co-conspirators. This would snowball into various false accusations, trials, arrests, tests, and, unfortunately, executions. And while not everyone that was accused was executed, just one innocent person being killed over a false accusation is too many. America wasn't the only place experiencing false allegations against women claiming that they were witches, but this was a plague going all over the European continent. In 1729, in Glengarriff, Ireland, parents Daniel O'Dahan and Adamir McCathane gave birth to a daughter named Elias Abigail Kedward. But unfortunately, the mother would pass away during childbirth, and not long after, she'd lose her father, too. Elias would later be taken into a Catholic orphanage where she would be subject to horrific abuse in the foster care system. During this time, she would begin writing in her diary, where she would detail the abuse that she was subjected to, but also what she would do to her abusers if she had the power to fight back, thus losing herself in dark fantasies. She would create her own dolls, stick figures, and effigies as a way of having friends that could protect her, calling them her companions and protectors against the beasts of the world. Over the years, her torment would continue, leaving her with nothing but bitterness, anger, and resentment, and wouldn't get any better, not even when she left her motherland for the Americas. In 1769, she would make the journey to America and would find herself in Blair, Maryland, and in an attempt to reinvent herself, gave herself the name Elly Kedward. Much of what happened when she came to the town of Blair is a mystery, making it difficult to separate fact from legend. But what we do have is that one day a group of girls had approached the village elders, claiming that Elly was luring children into her home to steal blood for magic potions. Now, whether this was true or not, no one knows, but at the trial, Elly would be found guilty and banished from the village. They tied her up, threw her into a wheelbarrow, took her into a nearby forest, and tied her to a tree, leaving her at the mercy of one of the harshest winters they had ever seen. It was during the next winter, in 1785, that people, specifically children, began to disappear, going into the forests and never coming back. And once half of the town's children had vanished, the remaining people decided to abandon the town, vowing never to return or to utter the name of Elly Kedward. Knowing all of this, is there any question as to why she ended up the way she did? Absolutely not. But I think the real question is, was she actually guilty? It's impossible to know, but if we look at what she does to her victims in the later years, I think it's likely that she did dabble in the occult when she was alive, drawing into their flesh various pagan symbols, creating totems using their hair, teeth, and clothing, ritualistic disemboweling, and various other occult-related practices. This shows me a very strong understanding of witchcraft that may have carried over from when she was living. Elly most likely became a ghost after dying, which makes an analysis from here on out difficult, as there aren't any set rules for ghosts or spirits, but it's fair to say that ghosts are the spirits of people that have stayed on Earth in a sort of limbo with unfinished business. This being the case, we can assume she stayed behind so that she can get vengeance and justice on those that had wronged her. Honestly, that's fair, but she continues to inflict pain, torment, and madness long after her vengeance is satisfied. It's my opinion that as she lingered behind, she was forced to stay in the state of anger and hate that would eventually turn her from a mere phantom seeking justice to an inhuman wraith whose far-reaching power would curse the land and anyone who dared step foot in her forests. And Elly Kedward, now the Blair Witch, was just getting started. In 1824, while a railroad was being built through the territory, one of the workers on horseback had gotten lost, but stumbled upon the abandoned town of Blair. This man had a friend named Burkett, who was a land developer who quickly set about bringing life back into the town. A year later, in 1825, when the town was celebrating a good harvest with a feast, a girl named Eileen Treacle had wandered down to the river. Witnesses would describe that a pale, ghostly hand shot out from the water, grabbed, and drowned her. Now, this river was actually more like a stream, being only a few inches deep, so no one was able to figure out how this young girl could drown in such shallow water. While the people were ready to believe it was a ghost, cooler heads told everyone to keep the superstitions to themselves, as they didn't want hysteria to spread. However, a week later, the river became polluted, with the townsfolk claiming they saw stick figures floating down the river. From then on, no one ever went to that water again. In 1886, about 60 years later, another little girl had wandered into the forest when she would happen upon a woman who claimed she was there to help her. The little girl described her as an old woman whose feet did not touch the ground. The woman led the girl to the basement of a nearby cabin in the middle of the woods, and she instructed the girl to face the corner and to not move until she had returned. The girl claimed after a couple of hours she finally left the basement, only to find the cabin empty and the floating woman nowhere in sight. After leaving the cabin, she quickly ran back to the town, not realizing that search parties had already been sent out to find her. The first search party of about 5 men had gone out and had not returned, so another search party had been set out to find them. But what they found was horrifying. All 5 men had been laid out on a flat rock, later to be called Coffin Rock, and all 5 had been killed, disemboweled, tied together with thick cords, and each had odd pagan symbols carved into their faces, hands, and feet. The search party was so terrified they quickly ran back to the village to get more men, but upon their return the bodies had just vanished. While there was no evidence of the bodies being there, they commented that the stench of death still hung heavily in the air. So far, what we see is about 60 years between each appearance of the Blair Witch, but I'm sure that there have been more disappearances and stories that just haven't been written down or told. We also see an evolution in her brutality and sadism. I can't imagine killing 5 men is an easy task, especially for a ghost. So my theory is that she may have had help from one of the other men. Perhaps one of the men in the party killed the others before she killed him herself. If I'm mistaken about her having help with those 5, I wouldn't be wrong with her next victims 60 years later. Born in 1903, Rustin Parr was the twin brother of Dale Parr to parents Wilson and Charity Parr, and the family were known for being of the land, so to speak. They were hunters, trappers, and mostly kept to themselves. Now, it was a rumor that Charity believed heavily in the Blair Witch, and thus sacrificed a child to ensure the healthy birth of her boys, but this was never proven. Later on, when the boys were not even 8, Dale was killed in a hunting accident, and it was speculated that Wilson had killed Dale because he thought he was a child of the witch. Rustin's parents would both pass away before he was the age of 10, when he would then live with his aunt and uncle. The time with his aunt and uncle was definitely abusive, but he would learn everything he needed to know about carpentry, skills he would then use to build himself a 3-story house in the forest. It was told that Rustin preferred the outdoors, away from the town, and would only come to the town maybe once or twice a year to get whatever supplies he needed. Those that came in contact with him only had nice things to say, commenting that he was very cordial, pleasant, and overall just a kind man. Just someone who enjoyed his privacy and solitude. One day, during one of his long forest walks, he came across a woman dressed in a long black cloak with the hood up over her head. He had never seen this woman before. But he mentions that he was not frightened of her, he was just curious. But when he tried to approach her, she vanished. Initially, he shrugged off these encounters, but they slowly became more frequent, and he would see her out of the corner of his eye and slowly begin to hear her voice at all hours of the day and night. The animals suddenly became afraid of him, and the townsfolk noticed a drastic change in his demeanor and would see him less and less. Along with the voices, he would hear strange sounds coming from the forest around his house, making him so frightened he couldn't sleep. A mixture of voices, noises, and shadowy figures led to Rustin going mad. So mad, in fact, that when the voices started giving him instructions, he followed without question. At first, it was mundane things like just sleeping in the basement or sitting in the corner for hours on end. But her most terrifying commands were yet to come. In November of 1940, the woman finally ordered Rustin to go into town and abduct the first child he saw. And Rustin, having been broken down, was unable or unwilling to disobey. And he would, later that day, lure and abduct Emily Hollins. She would be the first of 8 children that would go missing over the next 6 months. However, he would only kill 7 of them. He would take the children down to the basement in pairs, place one child in the corner, and Rustin would torture and kill the second, carving pagan symbols into their bodies and ritualistically disemboweling them, similar to the 5 men from Coffin Rock. One night, before he could kill the 7th child, Rustin awoke in the middle of the night to the woman at the foot of his bed. Like so many times before, only now she told him that he was finished, and that she would no longer come to him as long as he went into town and confessed to everything he did. Almost immediately, Rustin set Kyle free, and he went to the police confessing to the entire town that he was finally finished. Rustin had no problem confessing to everything he did, but in the end claimed that an old woman told him to do so. Rustin Parr was found guilty on 7 counts of first-degree murder, and initially he had pleaded insanity, but still wanted the death penalty for his crimes. It's my belief that he was a good man that was driven mad by the witch, and saw this punishment as a way of penance for his crimes. Throughout his time in prison before his execution, he would repeatedly receive stick figures in his cell, no one having any idea where they came from or how they got there. I think it's safe to say that any ounce of humanity Elly Kedward may have had has completely vanished. Now consumed by rage and hatred, she has become a sadistic specter, spreading pain and misery every 50 to 60 years. And like clockwork, this predator would have more food to play with in 1994. Film students Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard set out to make a documentary about the witch, whose story has now reached far and wide. The first day of filming, they interview a variety of residents that tell of the local legends from the Coffin Rock 5 to Rustin Parr, each resident with their own opinions on the validity of these accounts. The next day, the 3 travel towards the north entrance of the forest, see the sights, and set up camp for the evening. Over the next few days, as they travel further into the woods, the trio would experience everything from strange noises at night, the sounds of children laughing, getting lost, and wandering in circles, and ultimately being unable to leave the forest. Things take a more horrific turn when Josh suddenly goes missing, leaving Heather and Mike to try and find him, but the only evidence left behind is a totem made from Josh's blood, shirt, and teeth. On the final night, they hear Josh calling for help, and when they venture out to find him, they stumble on the witch's cabin. Once inside, the witch continues to mess with their sense of reality by having Josh's voice come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and the footage ends with Heather seeing Mike standing in the corner. The meaning behind this is not lost on the viewer as the camera falls and cuts to black. This shows me the true power that she possesses over the entire forest. Not only does she have the ability to change the terrain to mess with their heads, but also the search party, who went looking for the film students sometime later, the only thing they found was Josh's car. No campsite, no cabin, no witch, nothing. And unfortunately, after 10 days and thousands of man-hours, the search was called off, having found no trace of the students. 1 year later, students from the University of Maryland's anthropology department discovered a duffel bag containing film cans, DAT tapes, video cassettes, an HI-8 video camera, Heather Donahue's journal, and a CP16 film camera buried under the foundation of a 100-year-old cabin. It's not clear if the cabin was the one from the film, but it seems like the films were hidden for the purpose of someday being found. In 1999, the films were compiled and released in the hopes that someone would see the footage and perhaps provide clues as to their whereabouts. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and the 3 are still considered missing. During the final confrontation with the Blair Witch, we jump 20 years to 2016. This is odd, as the pattern is usually 50 to 60 years, but I'll get to my theories about that in a little bit, and with more advances in technology, we are able to see and experience more than we ever have. The last film opens with James Donahue, Heather's youngest brother, seeing footage uploaded to the internet of what seems to be the cabin from the Blair Witch documentary. And with his friends Lisa, Ashley, and Peter, they go to the Maryland mountains to meet the ones that uploaded the footage. A couple named Lane and Talia. Instead of telling them where they found the footage, they will instead show them by coming with them on their journey. And reluctantly, James and the others would agree. As the group treks through the forest, they are unsuccessful in their search at first, but the next day, when they see stick figures tied to the trees, they are hopeful. Later on, however, it is revealed that Lane had planted them because he wanted someone else to believe in the Blair Witch curse. After banishing the two, the others admit that perhaps the journey was a lost cause, and they prepare to head back home. However, the witch showcases her powers again by warping the forest around them and trapping them in eternal night. And not just the main group. Once the main group set up camp for the night, Talia and Lane wander into the campsite, both looking extremely haggard, and claim to have been walking around aimlessly for about 5 days, and the sun has not risen once. More stick figures appear, crafted by the witch this time, made with pieces of the party's hair and clothing. In a panic, the group separates. Peter and Ashley are taken by unknown creatures. Now, we see a bit of these creatures a little bit later, but it's believed that these things are former victims of the witch. James and Lisa find themselves at Rustin's cabin, and thinking they hear Heather's voice, the two go inside to find her. But since we know that the witch is capable of mimicking voices to lure her victims, although James claims to see Heather, but she remains just out of his reach. Lisa, on the other hand, is attacked by a crazed Lane who offers Lisa to the witch, indicating that he has taken Rustin's place, collecting victims for her, but Lisa stabs him to death before he can complete his offering. The film concludes with Lisa and James realizing that they were led there by the witch when they see themselves make the video footage that was posted to the internet that brought them there in the first place. My theory is that the Blair Witch has seen the power of technology and what its capabilities can be, and that's why her timeline has changed. Now she has the power to bring victims to her cabin with just the click of a button. After everything that we've seen, what can we conclude about Elly Kedward, the Blair Witch of Burkittsville, Maryland? She is a victim of her time. Born in an era where anyone can point a finger and claim you're a witch, and most of the time, your fate was sealed. No one can blame her for wanting justice on those that had wronged her, but in her quest was born a terrible curse that completely destroyed the person she once was, that killed at least 23 innocent people and has influenced the lives of thousands more. No longer is she just a mere witch, but a demonic entity bound to the land of Burkittsville that will consume anything in its path in pure evil. As of making this video, the franchise is set to release more movies as a way to revamp the series. If and when that happens, be sure to return so that we can enjoy whatever evil this witch has in store for us.